Bum 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 bum. Oh man, I always try to do a little music melody whenever I have a guest, like hum something to myself and try and stop it right when I think we're about to go live. And I get closer and closer, and sometimes I'm way up. This one I felt like I was way off. Welcome.
You have that look on your face.
Yeah, right. And then you're just like staring like a deer in headlights.
Yeah. Did I get it?
Did I get it? Was I close? Could you tell?
Yeah.
Welcome, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, whole bunch of different nouns and pronouns and all those things. Welcome to another episode of Disguise Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network. I am your host, Anthony. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2 underscores ANT. Whatever platform you're using to watch Disguise Coverage, please rate and review and subscribe. Disguise Coverage is part of the Cover One Sports Network. Part of that Cover One Sports Network includes the Hoof podcast, of which my guest tonight, Eric Brown, is a part of. Eric, what's up? Thank you for joining me. How you feeling?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, happy to be here.
We had this idea of, as we get closer to draft season, well, actually not even draft season, we are in draft season, as we get closer to the actual NFL draft, which is only several weeks away, rather than doing another episode of predictions and mocks and analysis and thinking, okay, like who's going to be available here? What should we take here? What are we looking for? What are our needs? Eric and I decided to do a little bit of a history lesson in this episode. And that's why this episode is titled Buffalo Bills Best and Worst Draft Picks. We are going to be going through all-time Buffalo Bills history and going through best and worst draft picks, obviously, as I would hope people have put 2 and 2 together based on the title of this episode. And in terms of best and worst, and we're going to start with worst, despite the fact that best is first in the title.
I feel like worst is easier.
Yeah, and I feel like it gets the conversation started a little bit more, and it's easier to be like, yeah,
well,
like
just in the past 10 years, like before Sean McDermott took over, I think it's a little easier to go with worst.
Yeah, that's the bigger, and Eric and I were talking about it offline before we started, because again, we're defining best and worst in terms of value. What did the player give you? Where was he drafted? What did he give you in his career? What did it lead to? And all those ramifications. So we're defining it as value. And there were, prior to the McBean administration, there were a lot of dark times, and that we could just do. Actually, not even one. You could do multiple episodes on just worst picks because there's so many.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It's funny. We had Jeremy White from WGR on one time, and I almost feel bad because like the majority of his career was the drought.
Oh my God, yeah.
Just imagine being a sports analyst for 20 years and 17 of them, your team never goes to the playoffs.
It's so rough.
Yeah, and
to be caught in those times, like
obviously being a fan, it's like. We went through that too, but we have a bright future now, so
yeah, it's a little easier. I think of that with Dan Le Batard, who I like his stuff, but he always just rags on the Bills being a Miami guy. But I think about that, like he's a Miami fan, and then he was working for the Miami Herald, I believe, in the 90s and in the 80s. So like Marino was his guy and the Dolphins were his team. And so I would hate and rag on the Bills all the time too, because they literally but they were the large hurdle and obstacle that Marino could never get by. And just imagine, because I always think of it from that perspective, obviously as a Bills fan, even though, again, I was just like a little baby during the 4 Super Bowls and I didn't really know what was going on, but how terrible it was to be like the team that went to 4 straight and couldn't get it done. But then just thinking about it now, like from Miami's perspective, because every year it was like, oh, Miami and Buffalo. And then to know that it was always Buffalo, but that they never won, that's got to just bother Miami fans even more. Like every year we lose to this team. And then, just let us try one time, please. Yeah. Like just get out of the way.
Those were huge storylines back in the day, like the Bills are back and, everyone loved the Cowboys. Nobody wanted to see the Bills back a 3rd time, let alone a 4th time.
No.
But I think that's what motivated that team to return, right? Is the naysaying.
Oh, 1,000%. And in watching the 4 Falls of Buffalo, that 30 for 30 special, which was awesome, but made me cry.
Yeah, exactly.
For multiple reasons. It was so terrible. But yeah, I didn't know all that going into like the 3rd and especially the 4th runs of the national media and national fan bases just being like, oh my God, like another Bills Super Bowl. Like, could you guys just get out? And then each time, like progressively losing more and more to just be like, please get out. And then they're like, nope, we're back. It's like, okay, not again. It's like, nope, we're back again.
It's exactly like, the Patriots going back to the Super Bowl again. But imagine that you have Dan Marino. Let's equate that to Josh Allen, and you can't get to the Super Bowl because the Patriots beat you every year. It would be awful. It sounds like torture.
It does sound like torture. And that's an interesting thing to think about, like, in terms of what is worse. Like, is it worse to be a Bills fan from those times and go to 4 straight and not win? Or is it worse to be, like, just because we're talking about like a Miami fan at that time and have Marino and know that he I don't want to just make it seem like it was because of the Bills. But yeah, he never really got another chance to go to a Super Bowl because of the Bills. Like, he only got to that one. And especially with like him going to the Super Bowl in 84, getting smacked by the Niners. And then you got to think, like, with how good he was early on and then having Don Shula and all that mystique. Like, if you're a Miami fan in the mid 80s, you're thinking like, oh, well, you know what? It sucks that we lost to the Niners. We'll come back. It'll be okay. And then as he's getting better, like in the late 80s, early 90s, he's in his prime. And it's just the Bills are always in the way, always in the way. Oh, that's got to suck.
Right. Especially because, like, you know, Jim Kelly didn't play for the Bills for 3 seasons. Right.
That's
Dan Marino did, you know,
lifer, a Miami lifer. And he's this guy. And you just can't.
I feel like they're, you know, Marino's probably living in the shadow of the undefeated team, right? They still talk about that today, and
big time.
And he is such a talented quarterback. I mean, it's really kind of sad he never really, you know, got a ring, but I mean, it happens. You know, he's still Hall of Famer, you know, and they had some great years with him.
Oh, they had so many great years. They were a really good team, and he was such, if not the main driving factor behind those teams. And yeah, just to see them where they went through and not only like not winning the AFC East, but then also like having multiple years where they played the Bills in the playoffs and they couldn't beat the Bills in the playoffs. And then you go from that, and then it's just like, I know it was after Marino's time, but then Marino's gone, and then the Patriots become this dynasty. Oh man, it's got to suck to be a Dolphins fan from like the late 80s all the way till now. You just keep getting trumped left and right.
And we talk about drought and stuff like that, but like the Jets are still not great. You know, Miami's they're getting better, but like their past isn't all that great in the last 15, 20 years either.
Oh no, definitely not.
So it's just nice to be the team that's on top now. It feels so good.
I'm savoring every moment of it, and I'm still waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under my feet. Like I just can't fully. I'm enjoying it and I'm soaking up every minute, but I'm still not like, yeah, we're one of the best like 4 teams. Yeah, we're like, I'm just like, no, we'll see what happens. Like,
I think we're all lying to ourselves if there's not a little bit of fear in there somewhere.
There has to be. You cannot be a Bills fan and be. I don't care even if you're. I mean, I know some people are ridiculously optimistic, but I feel like even the most optimistic Bills fan there's a little like, even if it's a 1 or 2% nugget in the back of your brain that's like, is this gonna fall apart?
Right?
Are we gonna be terrible? Is Josh Allen gonna come out and like throw like 15 picks in the first 4 games?
Or just think about what we thought of Deshaun Watson about 3 months ago to now. It's like, you know, it can just go away that quick. And it's like,
whether it's on the field or off the field stuff, teams' fortunes can turn on the in the blink of an eye. Or even if you go back farther, if we use the Texans as an example, granted the Bills should have beat them in the 2019 playoffs for a multitude of reasons.
Now confirmed.
1,000% confirmed. But even if you take that right, they go to Kansas City and they're up big at Arrowhead. And to go from that to where they are now, just like 2 years and 3 months later, like what a change in franchise direction in under 3 years. Like that's wild.
Yeah. And it's almost like the economy. You got to bring it down to bring it back up again. And they didn't really do that correctly. They just kind of let it all collapse. And now it's going to take years and years to get back to where they were.
Oh, 1,000%.
I mean, I feel like they're kind of an underrated team. They made the playoffs a lot. They won that division.
Yep, every year. But didn't really do anything with it.
Exactly. Didn't really do much with it and really didn't, they had the talent, but I mean, just mismanaged from the top, I feel like. They should have did more. They were in the dance every single year,
Yeah, they were like, it was like the Texans and the Bengals every year. It was like, oh, the Texans and like Matt Schaub and Andre Johnson and crew, they're gonna win the division, not do anything in the first round. And then it was like the Bengals every year and Andy Dalton, they're gonna go to the playoffs as a wild card, or they're gonna win the North. They're not gonna win. It was just, oh man,
yeah, tons of fun though. NFL is so fun. Now it's going to be all crazy now with like the 17th week, right? So now you get in the playoffs. Is 10-7 good now, or is it 11-5? I mean,
we have to redefine everything in terms of record.
Like I don't know anything anymore. You know,
I was thinking the same thing. Like, am I still like, okay, like how many touchdowns for a quarterback is good now, or like what's the yardage equivalent that I need to go now? Like,
fresh start. So
it changes our way of thinking. It is a bit of a fresh start, much like the Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era for the Buffalo Bills has been a fresh start, and they've delivered some quality picks throughout their tenure. And there's been other quality picks throughout the history of the Buffalo Bills. There's been several, which we're going to get into. But as we alluded to in the beginning of this episode, Eric and I are going to start with the less than ideal aspects of Buffalo Bills draft history. We're going to start with the worst Buffalo Bills draft picks. And again, as we alluded to, there's a dark history. There's a lot of, you could just do episode after episode about the worst Buffalo Bills draft picks throughout their time, because there's been so many. And the fresh start that we've had with McDermott and Beane, I think we're able to put some of this into the rearview mirror. But I don't know how it was for you, but when I started going through and compiling my list of players, I just started remembering all the emotions of being so upset and so miserable when these picks happen, and just, oh God, it was brutal.
Yeah, this is going to be funny.
Oh man. And
it brings you back, you know.
Being a Bills fan in the early 90s was awesome. I wonder, because I was just a little baby. I don't know if I would look back on it and appreciate it, or if I would have like mentally broke from the 4 straight losses and then not ever recovered. I don't know. I debate on that all the time. But
you could have missed the pain, but you would have missed the dance, right?
That's true. It's a catch-22. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah. Oh, all right, Eric. You are the guest. All right. So for what we're going to do to put everyone into the structure a little bit, we're each going to give our 3 worst, and then we're going to give some honorable mentions for our worst as well. And then we're going to flip over to the best side, give our 3 best, and then some honorable mentions as well. Eric, you are the guest. Give me your worst Buffalo Bills draft pick in the history of the Buffalo Bills. You want me to go
my top worst or my...
Your top worst. Your top number worst. One. Okay. This guy is the worst thing ever.
Okay, yeah, let's go Aaron Maybin for me. Just because drafted high. Okay. Drafted high. Turns out doesn't like football, right? And that's just a lack of scouting and getting to know the player before you draft him. Yep. Started 1 game in his 4-year career, right?
Yep.
Just 1.
Yep.
Did have 5 forced fumbles. 4 of them were with the Jets.
Unreal.
6 career sacks with the Jets. 10 quarterback hits, 9 of them with the Jets, a rival. I mean, how does it get worse than that when this guy's entire stat line is with your rival team and he's a top 10 pick?
Terrible. So for reference, Aaron Maybin was my number 2. And
I'm actually glad we didn't have the same top one.
Nice. Yeah, I like that too. So he was my number 2. And a lot of it too, because I wanted to compare, like, for my list of, like, we took this guy, but we could have had X, Y, or Z. Maybin's list isn't tremendous. Like, we could have had, realistically, at that position, it was Maybin, Brian Orakpo, Brian Cushing, and Orakpo and Cushing were taken right after. I remember watching this draft. I wanted Cushing so bad. If we didn't get Cushing, I wanted Orakpo. And then we took Maybin, and then he became what he became. But if you also just look at the rest of that first round, granted, some of these may not have been on the Bills' radar, may not have been fits, but Orakpo definitely was, and he was a need. Cushing was a fit and a need, and they were taken right after. And then the rest of that first round, Jeremy Maclin, Alex Mack, the center who's still alive and kicking and doing good. Yep. Percy Harvin, who we all know how his career ended, but early Percy Harvin was a monster.
Yeah, stud on the field, yeah.
Big time. Also, he lives in Bills lore negatively, but Vontae Davis, early Vontae Davis for the Dolphins and the Colts was a very legit corner.
The tight end position a little ahead of its time then, but still, Vontae Davis, man, imagine that.
And Michael Oher, the tackle for the Ravens, he not amazing, but still a solid piece and a solid contributor to a team that won many games. And then you're looking at Aaron Maybin again. Yeah, so 2 years with the Bills, only 1 start in 2 years. He played in 27 games, no sacks, and then was waived in 2011. Think about that. You spent a top 10 pick on a player, and he's gone within 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, within 3, crazy. Technically. That's super funny.
I feel like that's just a lack of execution from the scouting department. Yeah, something's off there. Will we ever know exactly what it was? Maybe he loved football and then decided he didn't anymore. I mean, how much can you really control in that scenario?
Yeah, and I remember looking back on it and watching it, and the talk around him was he was more like toolsy and prospecty and raw, and it was like, oh, but if you can coach him up and do this, he could be this and be this. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, if we're going to go edge rusher, I really wanted Brian Arakpo, but okay. And I really loved Cushing. And I remember being let down with the Maybin pick, but I was like, oh, let's see. And not only, you hit it on the head when you started. Not only was he bad for the Bills, but then the fact that like most of his career success then came with the Jets. And how annoying was it? Like he just got added to that Rex Ryan Jets defense and all of a sudden looked like, oh man, he can actually rush the passer.
You do play football.
Yeah. Oh. So you just didn't want to play for us. Got it. Oh, that really got
bummer.
Me.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
So Maybin was my number 2. My number 1, and it's been mentioned several times in the chat already. My number 1 is Sammy Watkins from the 2004 draft, mainly because, again, of the value aspect. So, this I don't even want to talk about it. So to get Sammy Watkins, the Bills traded a first and a 4th round pick in the 2015 draft to move up 5 spots in the 2014 draft to move up from number 9 to number 4. That first round pick that they gave up in 2015 the next year ended up being pick number 19, so a quality pick, and the 4th round pick in the 2015 draft ended up being pick 115, so also decent. So one top 20 pick and another in the top 120. So that's bad enough because they gave up resources.
Yes.
But then with
also,
where they go ahead.
Khalil Mack was there.
Right? That's my thing. So who was there?
I'm sure if you're getting there.
Even if we wanted to like go receiver, even if you wanted to trade up to 4 and 100% you have to take a receiver, could have taken Mike Evans because Mike Evans went 7. But no, they took Sammy. Okay.
He's a
but correct. So at 4, you could have had Mike Evans. You could have had Khalil Mack. You could have just stayed at 9. You could have taken Anthony Barr. You could have taken Aaron Donald, who went 12.
Odell Beckham drafted at 9.
Odell went there around like 11,
in a draft like that was like the receiver draft, right? I remember that being the headline. The receivers were so stacked. It was like 5 or 6 receivers went in the first round. I don't get why you trade up in that scenario.
No, and that's the big thing. Like so much draft capital we sacrificed to move up to get Sammy. And who else was there? There was just so much talent in that first round. Or even we could have taken Kyle Fuller, who went at 14. There was not necessarily, again, all these guys are 100% scheme fits or who was going to be taken. And I still remember the report. This is also the thing, too. The report was that the Bills stayed at 9. They were going to take Eric Ebron. So the thought there was like, I think that's that draft. So the thought there is like, oh, I guess I would have, no, I would have rather stayed at 9 and take Ebron, but that's still not a win. Like there was so much talent in that first round and we swung and missed on all of it. And I remember trading up and I was like, Khalil Mack, like yelling at my TV for Khalil Mack. And then we took Sammy, but it was all right. Like Sammy was explosive at Clemson.
Stud.
He was a stud. He was the number 1 receiver, 1,000%. He set all these records at Clemson, so highly regarded.
And he was like a franchise wide receiver at like 15 years old, right?
Exactly. Everybody knew he was going to be sick.
Exactly.
Like he came out of the womb and everybody was like, oh man, did that like toddler just crawl? Yeah, he just crawled like a 4.5 40, super fast.
But I mean, the Khalil Mack thing, like you said, just being from Buffalo, being part of the community, he speaks really highly of the community.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you not? And plus, the premium of a player like that, a pass rusher from Buffalo, he could be on the team 15, 20 years. I mean, this is the same team that took Bruce Smith. I mean, I don't see it. I don't see it. This is before the Kansas City Chiefs were the high-flying offense, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know what you're looking at with receiver when you really didn't even have a quarterback at the time.
No, they didn't, which is going to lead into another thing I mentioned later. And Sammy's Buffalo career, 3 seasons, 158 catches, 2,459 yards, 17 touchdowns, 37 games. He missed 11 games. We also found out in an interview he did last year that he didn't really work as hard as he should have. He was going out a lot at night and just getting drunk and showing up to practice hungover. When he got injured, he wasn't going to rehab, which we all kind of suspected. And that's the moment that really turned me against Sammy. Remember when he gets hurt and he hurts his foot.
It's like a toe, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes to Disney World and he's like posting stuff, and then or in Florida, and people are getting at him on Instagram being like, shouldn't you be like rehabbing or like doing stuff? And that's when he claps back and is like, oh, you guys are all losers. Like, I'm sorry, I'm enjoying my life. You guys like care about this too much. I don't need to care about that. But and I was like, oh my God, like everything you're saying is just awful. And then to read that report that came out last year in the interview and to know like that he was like, yeah, like I wasn't really applying myself and I wasn't really working hard, to know that we gave up so much and we could have taken someone so quality like Khalil Mack or Mike Evans, or even just stayed put and took Anthony Barr or Aaron Donald, like to know that was all there. And not only did we swing and miss, but we moved up to sacrifice things to get this guy, and he just did not deliver it. Even since leaving the Bills, going to the Rams and then going to Kansas City. I know he's got a ring and he's got some cool moments, but he really hasn't delivered. I know a lot of people when he left the Bills were like, oh man, he's going to be a number one receiver. He's going to be a stud. And he hasn't been. He just is a bust in so many
the expectations for a guy like that are just unbelievable. They're almost impossible to meet, I feel like. But he definitely didn't meet them, because they gave up so much. He's a top 5 pick. He's highly sought after in high school and college. And I mean, it's almost like the Trevor Lawrence thing. Like, is he ever going to meet expectations? He could be better than Andrew Luck and still not meet expectations,
It's tough when that's all laid upon you like that. That's a really good point.
Well, how good is Sammy Watkins going to practice hungover and then balling out on Sunday? Because he had some great games, too.
I thought of that.
Not like he had a stellar quarterback play each week.
No, that's like, so imagine like what he could have been. That's what I always think of, like, for any like wrestling fans out there, knowing that like Ric Flair was always out, like getting 1 hour of sleep and just drinking like crazy and still going on and putting all these amazing matches on. I'm just like, God, what could he have been if he wasn't like drunk 80% of the time? What could he have been? Yeah, Sammy, boatload of talent, but not the best head in the world on his shoulders. And yeah, that was right in the middle of like Rex Ryan's Clemson love and got to get Clemson guys. And it led to us taking Shaq Lawson in the first round some years later. Right. Yeah, Sammy, that one will forever be my worst, and nothing comes close to it. I know we're going to rank more, but Sammy is my hard one, and I will forever not be pleased with Sammy Watkins forever.
Yeah, fair. I didn't even have Sammy on my list because he was somewhat productive for the team. But yeah, good point. Good point, though. It's not always just the player either,
Oh, I like that he
giving
didn't
up all that value. And
that's what it, like, giving up the value, knowing that we gave up a 1, and then also losing out on that, and then also losing out on the other potential players that were there. It just forever will get me. And it's interesting that he didn't crack your top 3. So I'm very interested to see what your number 2 and your number 3 look like.
All right. So my turn.
Your turn. Go with your number 2.
Number 2 here. JP Losman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I like this comment. We were talking about Sammy and Ric Flair, and I like that Danny pulled up about Diego Maradona, who's going on 3-day cocaine benders while at Napoli and still the best soccer player in the world at the time.
Yeah, man, wow. Crazy.
JP Losman's your number 2.
Yes, just because, I mean, I think the potential was there for JP. He had the arm strength. He just never had a chance to succeed. Right. And my thing is, you simply just don't take a quarterback unless you can develop them. And we've learned that the hard way, obviously. But like these GMs, they should know this stuff. You don't draft a quarterback in the first round if you have no chance of developing him. Right. He never really had a chance.
That's fair.
He didn't get the ball rolling until year 3. Right. Really didn't play a lot in the first 2 years. Disaster ever since then. Basically we saw a little glimpse of JP, and then that was it. But to me, it's like, if you're not ready to take a quarterback, just don't do it. So
that's a good point. But then you also then it's tough though, because then you feel like you have to take a quarterback because you're in that spot where you're like, well, we don't have a quarterback. We don't really have the things around him to develop him, but we have to take one, so we're going to take a quarterback. And then you get someone like Losman. Yeah, he never clicked, but boy, when those times were not great, but some of my favorite Bills moments and some of the most beautiful passes I've ever seen are JP Losman deep balls to Lee Evans.
Yeah. I mean, I saw potential in JP. I think a lot of people did, but there's something wasn't right the entire time. Imagine we took Josh Allen. He doesn't even really play until year 3, gives you a little glimpse of hope, and then falls off a cliff the next 3 years. I mean, it's just, you just wasted 6 years,
Yeah,
It's just
it's
so
such
tough.
a back.
So that's really extremely disappointing for me, just because the quarterback position is polarizing. It's held to a higher standard, as it should be.
And especially that was the draft where Roethlisberger went, Eli Manning went, and Phillip Rivers went. And I remember the pick was going to be, because Losman, the Bills traded back up to get Losman.
Yes.
In that first round. And they were going to take Roethlisberger originally with their first pick in the first round, but he got taken by Pittsburgh right before. And I remember everybody talking after that. That's what makes it even worse for JP Losman, that he was taken in the same round with Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
And then people are talking after, like, you know, what could this quarterback class be 5-6 years from now? And it's like, well, the first three had great careers, and the fourth one, not good at all. And then I remember hearing about him going into the draft. I'm starting to piece things together. And I remember, because I used to get NCAA college football, and my boys and I would play it all the time. And I remember when the Bills loved them. We would get them just as much as Madden. It was the best thing, because we'd always have someone who would get Madden and someone who would get NCAA, and then we'd all just like always meet up all the time during the week, and everybody bring their games, and we would all like play. And I remember when we took Losman, everybody's like, okay, like let's play as Tulane in NCAA and see how good Losman is. Right. And he sucked. And everybody was just like, oh, dude, it killed all our like buzzes as little kids, because we were like, if he's not good in NCAA, he can't be good in real life. And looking back on it, that's a foolish notion. But at the same time, it was accurate, because he did not deliver. But boy, did he have some of the prettiest deep balls in the world to Lee Evans, man.
And you're right. They did trade back up and take JP at 22. But earlier in that draft, they took Lee Evans at 13.
Which was an awesome pick.
Awesome pick.
Maybe not the value, but he's a guy who I feel bad for in two ways. Because one, if he would have had solid quarterback play throughout his career, I think he really could have put up some big numbers. Lee Evans was sweet. And then I feel bad for him, because I was happy when he went to Baltimore, because I was like, sweet, he might be able to win a championship. And then he drops that pass against the Patriots in the AFC Championship. And that's all he's really known for. Yep. Yep. He drops the pass for the Ravens. Billy Cundiff misses that kick. Pats go to another Super Bowl. And I was just like, dude, poor Lee Evans goes to a new team. Yeah.
Yep.
If only he had a quarter. Yeah, that was a good pick. I like Lee Evans. I feel like you could have said this for so many players during those times, but like, man, if they had solid quarterback play, what could this person been?
I think the Bills hit on their receivers for some reason. There's a lot of good receivers. You think about Eric Moulds, Lee Evans. I mean, we talked about Sammy. I mean, there's a lot of receivers that are good in the Bills' history.
There you go. Lee Evans would have been awesome on another team. There were so many good ones that we hit on, and man, we just never had. Oh, JP Losman is your number 2. He was one of my honorable mentions. Very nice that you. I like this reference as well. I'm assuming you mean Eric Flowers, who the Bills took, I think, with like pick 30 in the 2000 draft, defensive end from Arizona State, who just did absolutely nothing. Oh, JP Losman is your number 2. I like that.
Yes. Big old bust.
So my number 2, as we discussed earlier, was Aaron Maybin. And I know some people mentioning in the chat Aaron Maybin, that was Eric's number 1. That was his worst Buffalo Bills draft pick of all time. And then Maybin was my number 2. So we discussed Maybin to lead off this segment. So I'm going to skip my number 2 because it was Maybin. And now I'm going to go to my number 3. And this one is my number 3 because he didn't perform, but it also led to my number 1, which I hate. So my number 3 is EJ Manuel, who the Bills took in the 2013 draft. And part of the reason why I hate this is because this is part of the reason why the Bills traded up for Sammy in the 2014 draft, because it was like, well, let's get a stud for EJ because we think EJ is going to be the guy. And EJ was not the guy. Again, I'm going to start with who else the Bills could have had around that pick. Right after the Bills took EJ Manuel. Again, on a team that could have used help in multiple positions. Kyle Long, guard that the Bears took, who had a very strong career with the Bears. Tyler Eifert, tight end, who has had some injury concerns now, but who is a pretty solid weapon for the Cincinnati Bengals. Yep. Xavier Rhodes, very strong corner for the Minnesota Vikings, still alive and kicking with the Colts. Then later in that first round, this is the one that really gets me as well, considering what we sacrificed in 2014. DeAndre Hopkins went 27th in the first round of that draft. And I'm pretty sure, I didn't write it down in my notes. I think EJ Manuel went 16th.
Yeah, 16th. Geno Smith shortly after him.
Which is just unreal. Those are the two top QBs in that draft. And that goes back to your initial thing earlier when talking about JP Losman. It's like, if you don't have something set up around a quarterback to help him succeed, should you really take him? And the Bills felt, we have to get a quarterback, and it was Geno and it was EJ, and both of them were not
so
good.
Bad, right? That
so bad. So bad. And to know, so again, Bills could have had Kyle Long. That first round wasn't stacked, but could have had Kyle Long, Tyler Eifert, Xavier Rhodes, DeAndre Hopkins. Also, Justin Pugh, lineman for the Giants, who had a pretty solid career and is now with the Cardinals. So it could have had some other things. And then EJ's career with the Bills, 4 years, 28 games, 17 starts, a 58.3 completion percentage. He threw for 3,502 yards, 19 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. He was sacked 43 times. Again, he had 17 starts. He had 19 touchdowns in his 17 starts, and he played in 28 games. He played in 28 games and it threw for 19 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But
he was presidential, though.
He was very presidential. And
I remember that was one of the traits.
God, and it was just...
And I was hopeful. I had a jersey, right?
Oh, did you really?
Because we were desperate for a quarterback at the time.
Wow.
Right? I remember this. And I was just, I don't care who it was at this point, right? Just give us a quarterback. Had the jersey. I don't know if you remember the Carolina game. It was like,
where he won it at the end with like 3 seconds
left. Dad was there. I was like, this is the guy. You know,
we're turning it around
because he's presidential and he has grit in that one game. And then that was
that one time.
yeah.
He
didn't wow me with his arm. Like, knowing what I know now, looking back, I'd be like, this dude can't throw the ball.
No, and
primarily a running quarterback in college, and you could just see it. Has the size, right? Has the maturity. I think. Great guy.
Good head on his shoulders.
100%.
Just didn't have the arm. Couldn't read defenses.
Even the screen passes were underwhelming. You know what I'm saying?
Everything.
And you just wanted it to work so bad, but it just. I feel like by week 5 of his rookie year, you just know.
Yeah,
this guy's not it. And Geno Smith could actually throw the ball. You know, he's getting punched by his teammates, but he had the arm talent to play.
But he could throw at least.
He's still in the league. You know.
He couldn't. Oh, that's a good comment as well there. He had an extreme attachment to hanging onto the ball. Yeah, by how many sacks that he took, his accuracy wasn't great. His arm strength wasn't there.
Running quarterback.
Running quarterback who couldn't make reads and get through his progression. And I was against it from the jump. My favorite college football team is the Miami Hurricanes. And so I hate Florida State. And I never liked EJ Manuel just because he was from Florida State. But I remember watching Florida State games to root against them. And I just never thought he was like really good like that. I didn't think Geno Smith was great either by any means. But if I had to pick between the two.
But Geno had like the college stats to back it up. Too.
He played in like
West Virginia.
He played in like a fun electric West Virginia offense. And I was like,
they were good.
Okay.
Who was Tavon Austin was on that team?
I think so. I think that was still a Rich Rodriguez coached West Virginia team. Yeah, they threw the ball around and put up points. And I was like, as a younger kid, I was like, okay, like I'd rather take Geno. And then we took and even if we took EJ, that was the thing too. Like, even if EJ Manuel was your guy to the point where you're like, we're coming away from this draft with EJ Manuel, you could have got him in like the second round at the earliest. Like, you didn't have to burn a top 20 pick on EJ Manuel.
And look, you should never take a quarterback if you don't know who the coach is going to be.
Oh, very good point.
Right? They didn't have their coach at the time. You know, I think Marone came in the following year, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they did play his rookie year with Marone. The following year, he gets benched for Kyle Orton.
Oh my God, he does get benched for Kyle Orton.
Yes.
Oh man,
and he had an 8-8 season. Everyone was excited about 8-8. You know,
they call Kyle Orton like off his couch, like he's done, and he picks up the phone as he's like eating chips and dip, watching. Exactly.
Yeah.
What?
I'll play. Yeah, sure.
I guess whatever. Yeah, I'll do it. Oh my! He does get benched for Orton. That's just.
And I remember just the media screaming for EJ Manuel his sophomore year. You know, And the Doug Marone's like, he's just not ready to play. He's not ready. He's not ready. He's not ready.
And everybody's
every
like, what?
single week. And really, Kyle Orton was playing really well.
Yeah, Orton wasn't bad.
That was the best Bills team, of the drought. That was the best team in my opinion.
Yeah, Chris mentioned in the comment, Kyle Orton, 9-7. Wasn't Kyle Orton was Kyle Orton the quarterback of, I'm starting to blur things together. Wasn't Kyle Orton the quarterback of the Bills team when we beat Green Bay in Buffalo? And it was like a sweet.
Yeah. That was game.
That was the 9-7 Bills team, right?
Mario Williams sacked Aaron Rodgers, right?
For the safety.
The safety.
Yeah, after Jordy Nelson dropped that wide open pass that would have led to like an 80-yard touchdown.
Yes. Yeah, I was at
that you were at that game?
Yeah.
Oh, what an awesome game to be a part of.
Oh, man, I've wasted so much money going to watch Bills games.
It just hasn't panned out.
Yeah. I used to go to a New England game in Buffalo every year because I wanted to see the remake of the 2011 tear the field goal down and go crazy like the college atmosphere, and just never happened.
Every year was like, this is going to be the year again, and it was like, nope, we're
that Green
down
Bay
35.
game was electric though. It was one of the more electric games I've been to.
Everybody knew the Packers were sweet. They were firing on all cylinders, and the Bills defense put up that was the Bakari Rambo like 2 or 3 interception game, and everybody was like, oh, is Bakari Rambo like the best safety in the league? And it was like, no.
He's definitely got the best name.
Oh, he does have a first and last name, Bakari, and then Rambo. That's a sweet name.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a great
game.
Sign him. just sign him. How good is he? Doesn't matter. Have you seen his name? It's fantastic. We're bringing him in.
And then, I think, again, knowing what we know now, if you interrupt the development process of a quarterback, he's got no chance.
Oh, yeah, you're done. It's hard you can't stop start.
Especially somebody as raw as EJ Manuel was. I mean, we saw Josh Allen take huge steps, but let's just the facts are the facts. EJ Manuel didn't have that type of ability. Ability helps. It helps a lot, I think.
Oh, big time.
He didn't have it,
How dare you to this comment? I am not a huge Brady fan, and I'm so upset at this comment from this person.
Yeah,
this person's a horrible person. I would fight that person.
That's like calling your mom a bad name,
That's worse than that.
Yeah.
The repercussions of the EJ Manuel thing are also what gets to me with. Again, I mentioned it a little bit. I think that's part of the reason because, again, we took EJ Manuel in 2013. I think we go for that Sammy deal in 2014 because of EJ Manuel. Because it's like, okay, let's get him a guy, which I get the philosophy behind it. The Bills did the same thing last offseason with Stephon Diggs. It's like, well, let's see if Allen's the guy. We think we need to get him some help. Let's get him Stephon Diggs. Granted, that had just happened to work out.
And they had a good defense, too.
They did have a good defense.
I would always say, I'm a traditional football person. Like if I was a coach, I'd be run the ball, play good defense. I'm that guy. I want to win like McDermott 10-3, So if you're developing a quarterback, I would always say defense first,
Give me that. I want tough smash mouth football. Right. Give me 10-3, 13-10
Get a solid running
football.
back and then limit your quarterback. Now it's different if you have a Pat Mahomes, but if you have a guy like EJ Manuel, limit the quarterback and get creative, right? Throw the ball 20 times a game, but I don't even think he could do that.
No. And they tried again, I respect the notion, I guess, of being like, well, we have this guy. Let's get him some help and see if he's the guy. Let's get him Sammy Watkins. And they just swung and missed horribly. So in back-to-back drafts, you go EJ Manuel in the first round, and then you go Sammy Watkins in the first round. Then you sacrifice draft capital in the 2015 draft.
Yeah.
Which hurts because the two dudes you just spent first-round picks on are going to be huge busts. And it was just, dark times. Getting just very upset.
So different.
I'm very interested to see who so again, that was my number 3. I guess I'm kind of ahead of you now, even though you went first. So now who is your
I can't remember what year the Pegulas bought the team. It was after that, right?
I don't remember.
I think it's after
I'm gonna look it up right now.
One Buffalo.
I'm going to look it up right now.
Just because I think that's really what changed the, trajectory of the team.
They purchased the team in September of 2014. So, yeah, literally later that offseason of the Sammy Watkins pick.
Right. So then it takes time to learn, right? How to be an owner, how to get winning people in the building. 5 years later, we are where we are.
Very true.
So I think ownership's a big part of it. But anyway.
I would agree with that. I would agree. Oh man, I'm in a bad mood now. What's your number 3?
My number 3, Carlos Williams. 5th round.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And because I feel like the Bills got played by this dude. He came in. Wow, this dude's got talent. He's scoring touchdowns. He's catching footballs, and he looks like a freak out there, right? And then the offseason, you hear a little rumor, though he's not in shape and all this stuff. And then he's out of the league. His stat line he's out the league the end of his first year. I don't know. I get he's a 5th round pick, but I feel like I was hopeful for him. I feel like the coaching staff was hopeful for him, and he just fooled everybody. And I feel like there's too many guys trying to get in the league to not study him up and find out what kind of personality you got, So he really just wasted a roster spot for a year, and then he's out of the league.
I guess the come down is probably worse from what it was.
Yes.
Like, you thought you had this guy, and it was like, oh yeah, and here's another comment too. Man, I remember that 1 year production with Carlos Williams. I had so much hope. Yeah, and you were like, oh my God, did we just hit did we just strike gold on this 5th round guy?
Stevie Johnson all over again?
Oh my God, what an amazing pickup. Yeah, and he was like a bigger back with straight line speed, but he was breaking tackles. He was scoring big touchies.
He was a freak for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just
disappeared, literally gone.
Magic Man.
Didn't even make it through training camp, I'm pretty sure. Didn't even show up, I think.
No, he Kaiser Soze'd it and was just he's gone.
Yeah.
Oh,
he fooled everybody.
He did fool everybody. Wow, I was not expecting him to crack the list.
Yeah. I had to be a little different,
I like that. What
and it hurt. It still hurts. That's why
I could see it in your face when you said it. You were like, you yelled it. You're like, Carlos Williams. I was like, whoa.
He couldn't even buy his jersey because no one knew he was going to be good,
Oh man. Wow, cool top 3. I like that they're very different. What do you got for honorable mentions?
I got EJ Manuel in there for obvious reasons, and then Bucky Brooks, 1994.
Wow, of famous NFL Network fame now.
The Bills front office drafted an NFL analyst, not a player.
That's messed up.
No, I'm playing.
Shots at Bucky Brooks. I'm going to snip it. I'm going to snippet this part and tweet it at him. Be like, look what we said.
Yeah. Only 9 kick returns. I mean, but he's only on the Bills for 3 games when he got traded, and he's a 2nd round pick. So it's
yeah, that's not good value there.
Not good value at all. And and it's funny.
It is very funny. Yeah. They drafted an analyst, that's very funny.
Yeah. You know a lot about football, but you're in the wrong side of things.
Yeah, you're on the wrong. Could you just retire now and then start talking about stuff? I know that would probably have been better value if they just kept him on the roster as an analyst or something, but didn't put him out on the field. My honorable mentions, some of these are a little tougher. So I have Marcel Dareus, even though we did get we got some good production from him early on. He was a force, and he did good things. That's the reason he didn't crack my official list.
Typical Alabama defensive tackle, you know.
But he was a stud coming out. He made sense. Yep, right. He made sense at the time. Everybody going back in that draft, everybody and their mother had us taking Dareus. The thing that was what it was going to be, though, originally everybody had us taking Cam Newton. But then Cam Newton has his pro day and lights the world on fire.
Right.
And Cam Newton then goes this is what killed. Cam Newton goes number 1 to Carolina, who I would have taken because we still needed a quarterback, and Cam Newton was sweet.
Cam's personality in Buffalo would be so interesting.
Would have been wild. And just
wild.
How big his personality was, how big he was, his arm, he would have fit in. I think it would have set the world on fire in Buffalo. Especially with
anywhere he goes, he fits in, honestly.
Yeah.
He just has that face.
And could you have imagined, especially Buffalo at that time, so this is 2011, Buffalo being down and out and a joke, but then here comes electric, braggadocious Cam Newton, who's going to tell everybody yep, I don't care about that. We're going to be sweet. I'm sweet. The Bills are going to be sweet. That could have been very interesting. And so Cam goes 1. Von Miller goes 2. Listen to this. So Cam goes 1. This is what gets me. Cam goes 1. Von Miller goes 2. Dareus goes 3. Are you ready for the next 3 people after Dareus?
I don't know.
AJ Green.
No.
Patrick Peterson.
Ooh, that would have been nice.
And Julio Jones.
How does Julio go that far down?
Right? And then later in that first round, he's still a freak. He's still a monster. He tears his hammy every other day and still just keeps rolling.
Watch a lot of NFL sound effects or whatever. But a ton of receivers say Julio Jones is the best receiver they've ever seen.
He's a monster.
He can do it all at that size. He was
one of those few dudes who was like a top prospect and then went to a top school in Alabama and then was a top player in the NFL. Like he's literally crushed it at every single level.
He's like so good it's boring.
He's just a monster. Oh, and then he's so good. He's boring here. And there wasn't JJ there too. Another comment, JJ Watt at 11. Correct. So later in that first round, Tyron Smith, the all-pro tackle, goes to the Dallas Cowboys. We could have used that. J.J. Watt goes later in that first round at 11. Mike Pouncey, Ryan Kerrigan, Nate Solder, Robert Quinn, all guys who have had longevity and productive careers at high-value, high-leverage positions. Or at the earlier part of that first round, you just have all-pro studs like A.J. Green, Patrick Peterson, Julio Jones. And this was a defense at the time, right? So Patrick Peterson. Didn't take Patrick Peterson.
That would have been
nice. Our number 2 corner on that Bills defense was Drayton Florence, who, as much as I love him for having that pick of Tom Brady and housing it in that 2011 game, which was fantastic.
What year is this draft?
2011.
2011.
So that was later. So later that Watkins. Year. Correct.
Right. Yeah, the offense was nothing at the time.
No. So look at its corner. Drayton Florence was a starting corner. I'm taking Patrick Peterson over him every single day. You're looking at defensive ends. The starting defensive ends in the Bills defense were Alex Carrington and Dwan Edwards. I would have taken J.J. Watt.
Before Mario Williams as well. Huh?
Correct. So I would have gladly taken J.J. on that team or Ryan Kerrigan or Robert Quinn, but that's fine. Let's look at wide receiver. You know who the Bills' number 2 wide receiver was? Donald Jones.
Ouch. This is Fitzpatrick. Now I'm getting some flashbacks.
Yeah, again, this is that 2011
Trent
team.
Edwards.
Yep, that's Trent Edwards. This is that 2011 team later. Yes. Well, after that draft, that's the team that beats New England with Fitzy and Freddie in Buffalo.
Yep, Stevie Johnson.
Just there was so much. And I looking back on it, I know Dareus was going to be the guy, and he was really.
What kind of quarterbacks went in that draft, real quick?
Oh, let's see. What kind of quarterbacks went?
Because, I mean, look, at the time, Fitzpatrick was not Fitzmagic yet.
No, he was not Fitzmagic.
Trent Edwards was all done. We knew he was done. You couldn't even they couldn't even figure out who to play week in, week out, you know. I mean, that's a problem.
So Cam Newton went 1.
That's right.
I think Christian, not great.
This was this is the lockout year.
Jake Locker goes 8. Blaine Gabbert goes 10. Christian Ponder goes 12. Yeah. I liked Jake Locker. I didn't think he was going to be
the lockout, right? The lockout had an impact on that draft. That's why teams panicked and kind of just took quarterbacks early. None of them worked out except for Cam.
No. Oh, but then Andy Dalton goes 35th in the second round. Colin Kaepernick goes 36th in the second round.
Look, Kaepernick, that could be something back then.
That could have been very interesting. Even Andy Dalton, I would have taken Dalton
over but just the hope, right? If you're in that scenario and all those quarterbacks are flying, I mean, it seems like you'd take a shot.
Oh, and it's just Dareus did some good things for us. I know he didn't end up working out, but yeah, it was really just who else was taken. That draft was a very successful draft, and we could have had one of these other studs, and we didn't get him. So that was an honorable mention for me. I also had the 2002 draft tackle Mike Williams from Texas at pick number 4. The real thing with that was between him and Bryant McKinney, who was going to be the first tackle off the board. Bryant McKinney ended up having a strong career for the Vikings and then rejuvenated his career with the Ravens, won a Super Bowl, and then he had that really horrible boat incident that he's kind of known for. And then also, here's what also gets you. That draft wasn't loaded, but realistic plays for the Bills at that time. Defensive tackle John Henderson was taken by the Jags a little later. He was an all-pro, fantastic. Roy Williams, the safety out of Oklahoma, went to the Dallas Cowboys. And then Dwight Freeney went in that draft a couple picks after, stud. And at that time, the Bills defense, Chidi Ahanatu was starting at defensive end, so we could have used an upgrade there. Ron Edwards was starting at defensive tackle, could have used an upgrade there. And Coy Wire was one of our starting safeties, so we could have used an upgrade there. That's also the draft where Ed Reed went in the 20s because nobody thought Ed Reed was going to be in anything. So that's a very interesting draft.
Works.
The Mike Williams one gets me.
Did they have Paul Posluszny then? I'm trying to remember those years.
No, that was later.
A little bit later.
In the later two. Yeah, because I remember being in high school when we had Paz. And so Mike Williams is an honorable mention for me, but it's not higher because, again, really the pick was just going to be, it was between him and Bryant McKinnie. And, that's a good comment there from Cliff. Every pundit in the country had Williams slotted for it. Yeah, I remember literally every mock draft I looked at was like Mike Williams to the Bills, Mike Williams to the Bills. And if it wasn't Mike Williams, it was Bryant McKinnie. We just happened to pick the wrong tackle. And then this comment shades my other honorable mention, John McCargo. Eric, you and I talked about it offline. So John McCargo, right? Pick number 26 in the first round of the 2006 draft, a draft where the Bills took Dante Whitner in the top 10, which I also did not find good value in, but alas. So John McCargo, okay? The 26th pick in the 2006 draft, okay? 5 years with the Bills, 40 games, 1 start, 2.5 sacks, and 47 tackles. In 5 years and 40 games, he had 47 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 1 start. Other players who were taken right after him, literally in consecutive order, I would have taken any of these people. D'Angelo Williams, the running back for the Carolina Panthers.
Yep, stud.
Not great value, but I would have
career.
Yep,
he played well into his 30s.
Yeah, he did. Him and Jonathan Stewart were a sweet combo in Carolina for a while. Mercedes Lewis, tight end. Athletic, vertical stretch, would have gotten more burn than John McCargo. And then this is the killer one. Nick Mangold to the Jets, all-pro center, helped turn that line around. That draft, the Jets had 2 first-round picks. We had 2 first-round picks. We took Whitner and McCargo. The Jets took DeBrickashaw, Ferguson, and Mangold and changed their entire offense in the span of a draft. Solid. And I really wanted Mangold. For reference, the Bills started Melvin Fowler at center that season. I don't even know who that is. No. I would have gladly taken Mangold. McCargo didn't even really do anything. And if I'm correct, and this is a cool thing, but also a thing that kind of drives you a little nuts, later in that draft, because I thought, John McCargo, he's going to start in 2006, but he wasn't the starter in 2006. You know why? Because later in the 2006 draft, that same draft where the Bills burnt a first-round pick on John McCargo, the Bills took Kyle Williams in the 5th round. And then Kyle Williams crushed it and did Kyle Williams things, was the starter in 2006. Maybe that partially goes into why McCargo never took. But look at the value you got from Kyle Williams. If McCargo was just halfway decent, look what you could have had in the middle 100%. Of your – Exactly. And you don't get that. So, those are my honorable mentions. I also have one. You and I talked about this earlier.
McCargo's a really good one. It definitely rivals Aaron Maybin.
Oh, for sure.
I didn't hear any stats for the rival team on there, so I'll stay with Aaron Maybin.
There's one I want to pull because Cliff, you and I talked about this earlier offline. So Cliff messaged me on Twitter in response to the tweet going out for this episode and was talking about Walt Patulski and that he made his case on Twitter. So I wanted to pull that out because I like history things. And I did not know who Walt Patulski was. I've heard of him, but I didn't really know. And so he was the first pick in the 1972 draft. And he's just regarded as one of the biggest busts in NFL history. He played at Notre Dame, had a bunch of accolades, bunch of awards. Cliff, feel free to continue to comment in the comments about more Walt Patulski hate, but Walt Patulski's been referred to as one of the 14 worst number 1 picks of all time, regardless of sport.
Jeez, cringe.
Cliff or Chip also Chip also says, he's Clifford here, but he's Chip on Twitter. He says, my most important source is my dad, who had season tickets from 1960 until 2016. He sat through all those rotten years and says Patulski stunk and stood out on teams where everyone stunk. So also a mention for the, and I'm seeing some another comment here, Patulski being a good one. Yeah. So for a bit of the older fans, Walt Patulski, number 1 pick, who did not work out. He makes my honorable mention, and I really appreciate that shout out on Twitter and the follow up here, because I heard that and I was like, what is this?
When you first mentioned that name, I thought for sure it was on the movie Old School, and that was Blue.
You're my boy. Like, that's his real name.
Yeah.
His Blue's real name is Walt Patulski. That's super funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
I forgot what his Blue's actual name was, but it's really close to Walt Patulski.
Yeah, I don't remember. Oh, there were some bad ones. So some bad ones in our officials, some bad ones in our honorable mentions. Yeah, your dad does say it all. I appreciate you for that. Thank you so much. Cousin O. Yeah, I've seen this comment coming through. I don't know much of Cousin O either. There's a couple other ones that have come through. Terrell Troop has been mentioned multiple times. Oh, I feel like the honorable mentions list could go on.
Isn't it weird though? Like the Bills have a lot of hits at receiver in their history, but like defensive tackle just seems to be like
not good.
A place that sucks.
No, except for like Kyle Williams. Everything else,
right.
It's just
it's crazy.
And yeah, for it's Aaron Maybin hands down. That was Eric's number 1. Maybin was mine number 2, but you got to check the beginning of the episode or join us live. We talked about that in the beginning. But now, so again, those were our honorable mentions for worst Buffalo Bills draft picks after we started with our hands down worst. But now we're going to move to a more positive side of things, and we're going to flip it up and go to the best Buffalo Bills draft picks. Again, keep this in mind. So our thought process behind this was, where are certain players now? So, for example, Eric and I talked about Josh Allen. You might want to say Josh Allen. He's one of the best Buffalo Bills draft picks. However,
I want to, but I can't.
I want to as well, but very small sample size. For all we know, he could be out of the league in a year or two. We don't think he will, but so we're basing our thoughts here on longevity, sample size, concrete things. That's part of the thought process before anybody jumps down anyone's throat and is like, how come you didn't mention this? So that's some of the peek behind the curtain there. Eric, again, you are the guest. Go first. Who is your best number 1 Buffalo Bills draft pick of all time?
And that's going to be the unicorn of all unicorns, Bruce Smith.
Okay.
When you take a guy in the draft, you want it to be a guy like Bruce Smith. Played in Buffalo until he's 36 years old, drafted at 22, played in the league until he was 40. Right. And this guy's a freak defensive end. He's got the sack record, 279 total games. It just doesn't happen. Right. Guys like this don't exist in the world. Double-digit Pro Bowl appearances. When you think of what is a unicorn in the NFL draft, Bruce Smith's the example that you give
of a unicorn.
Yeah,
that's good. So
it doesn't get better.
No, it doesn't. Bruce is my number 3. And the reason he was my number 3 was just because, so he was first overall, but my number 1 and my number 2 were taken later. And with what their careers turned out to be, I thought the value was better. But Bruce is my number 3. And again, you hit it. So he was the first overall pick in 1985. He did what a first pick is supposed to do, and I like that. No one else. Bruce Smith is it. He could be the whole list.
And maybe a little above what he's supposed to do. Right?
Oh, 1,000%. If you take a guy in the first round, but especially in like the top 5, especially at number 1, he needs to be a guy who is a career franchise cornerstone. He has to be somewhat, if he's a quarterback, he has to be the face of your franchise. If he's a defender, he has to be all pro level. Bruce Smith was that and more. Again, as you mentioned.
And a good person off the field. How is this possible?
Boom. A guy who wasn't in the best state of mind when he came in, but revamped himself, transformed his body, just became a monster. First overall pick in the 1985 draft. He was an 8-time All-Pro. He was a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He is a member of the NFL Hall of Fame. He is the all-time leader in the NFL in sacks with 200 sacks. He played for the Bills for 15 years, played 217 games. He had 171 sacks. That's an average of 0.8 sacks per game. The man almost averaged a sack a game for his career with the Bills, which is unreal. He also had 35 forced fumbles with the Bills. He had 1,054 tackles. Tremendous career, Hall of Famer, arguably, if not the best defensive end in NFL history. And just a guy who,
if you're thinking of like the top 5 number 1 picks of all time,
got to be up there.
Bruce makes that list, right?
Oh, he has to be. He has to be. Oh, there
definitely.
Even Cliff on there agreed. Bruce, even though he's number 1 overall, he's definitely it. He's a top 5. That's even it too. Like a top 5 defensive player all time. You can make the case that Bruce Smith is like one of the best defenders of all time. One of the best players in NFL history. Oh, we're getting more live Bills fans here. He is the best defensive end. Yeah, it's tough to argue against that with what he was. I like that. yeah, I feel like Bruce is such low hanging fruit. He's.
Yeah. I'll just take that. Thanks.
Yeah, he's the NFL all-time leading sack leader. So, like, check. That's good.
Yeah.
So, in the vein of value, so I want to bring up this. So, Kyle Williams, as we mentioned earlier, 2006 NFL draft, 5th round, great value. We've got some other comments for O.J. Simpson, Thurman Thomas. That was where I'm going to pull up this comment from Kenny, who said it twice. Thurman Thomas, 2nd round pick and 91 NFL MVP. Thurman Thomas is my number 1 of all time because of that reason. 2nd round pick, 40th overall in the 1988 NFL draft. He was an MVP. He was the 1991 Offensive Player of the Year. He was a 2-time All-Pro. He's a member of the Hall of Fame. He played 173 games in 12 years for the Buffalo Bills. He had 11,938 rushing yards. So basically, he ran for 12,000 yards in 12 years. So he averaged about 1,000 rushing yards a season at the time when that was very significant. Right. 65 rushing touchdowns, but then the dual threat. 456 receptions, 4,341 receiving yards, 22 receiving touchdowns. He was the do-it-all every down back before that was a thing. And if he was in today's NFL, oh my God, like
he's Christian McCaffrey. Right?
Yeah, he's the number 1 pick in fantasy every year.
I'll never I used to watch VHS tapes when I was a kid on NFL films. And they were the ones I remember is they were comparing Barry Sanders to Thurman Thomas and who's the better back. And ultimately they decided Thurman Thomas is better because you can do so much with him, right? You can put him in anywhere on the field and give him the ball. I think he had something like a 70% catch rate as a wide receiver.
And those weren't just like screens and dump offs. He was running routes like downfield.
He's going downfield, right? It's just like, so innovative during his time. I mean,
think about, so you mentioned those 2.
Round pick, right?
Yeah, 2nd round pick, 40th overall. So you got a Hall of Famer, one of the best all time at his position at the 40th pick. Tremendous value. And think about even the Barry Sanders comment, you mentioned it. Think about the fact that they were in the same backfield together at Oklahoma State.
Oh, I know.
And Thurman Thomas was so good that Barry Sanders was on the bench. It wasn't even like let's get both these guys some work. It was like, no, Barry, you sit. Yeah. Thurman's going to get the ball. And Barry Sanders, to me, he's the best running back of all time. He's he's one of my favorite players of all time.
Most fun to watch, definitely.
So fun. Oh, that's a good comment too. Thurman was Marshall Faulk, but better. Imagine, that's even my thought too. Like, imagine Thurman playing in the later 90s or nowadays. He would be, like you said, Christian McCaffrey or Marshall Faulk. Just his ability, what he could do out of the backfield.
He could definitely transcend like different eras of the NFL. It's something I never considered before, but he's one of the players you could insert anywhere in time from then till now.
1,000%.
Even today's NFL, he would be a phenomenal player.
Big time, and even more so, great comment here from Cliff. No argument for Thurman being number 1, best offensive player by a lot on those teams. And awesome point, he was a devastating blocker. He was so strong in blitz pickups and blocking. Again, imagine that. Like, how many times do we hear nowadays for running backs? It's like, well, we can't really keep him on the field for 3rd down because his pass pro isn't there or his blitz pickup isn't there. Thurman would be a guy who literally can do anything and everything. And we've talked about it with the Bills, with not wanting to telegraph what you're doing by putting certain running backs in the game. If you put Thurman in the game, you don't know if it's going to be a run, if it's going to be a pass, if he's running a route, or if he's staying in the block, because he literally can do everything at such a high level. And yeah, that's why he was my number 1. He did so many things. He was so great. He's a Hall of Famer, MVP, All-Pro. Right. In fact, we took him in the 2nd round, 40th overall.
Right. Tremendous. He's still a huge part of the community, right? He's always doing stuff with the Bills and interviews, things in Buffalo. I mean, that's huge too.
And so for all those reasons and many more, also a cool little nugget here from Cliff. Sanders returned kicks. Man, so Thurman started and Barry Sanders returned kicks. That's how good Thurman Thomas was. Ooh.
And they didn't win a national championship?
I don't think, no. I mean, think about that, like, at the time, like, is there a better backfield ever, NFL or college? I mean, maybe NFL with, like, Bo Jackson and Marcus Allen, but Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas in the same backfield? Holy hell. I don't think there's a better backfield ever. NFL or
duo.
college.
Yeah, duo. It's got to be the best. I mean, 2 Hall of Famers in the same team.
Why, arguably
Crazy.
like the best at their position. Barry Sanders is regarded as, I think Thurman is slept on more in terms of like national attention, but so many pundits and people rate Barry Sanders as the best of all time. So,
right. Man, I think the Bills were stacked when Thurman played too. They had stars. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on that team. The Lions
really good
was Barry Sanders.
Well.
You know, the Lions team was Barry Sanders and Barry Sanders only.
Poor Barry. Yeah, and they were so bad that eventually he was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm out.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't. It's mentally too taxing. I'm done. Ooh, that's a good question from Roman. Who do you start, Barry Sanders or Thurman Thomas?
I'd start Thurman, but I'm biased.
But I think if it's today's NFL,
pass protection, right?
If it's today's NFL, I'm starting Thurman Thomas. I think Barry was better as a receiver, as a receiving back than people give him credit for. I think he could do some things that it just got overshadowed. But with that, if it's today's NFL, I'm picking Thurman Thomas. If it's 90s NFL, I'll take Barry Sanders. But if it's today's NFL, I'll take Thurman Thomas. Because again, like what we said, he do it all.
I feel more safe with Thurman, right? You're going to get your 5 to 10 yards and no fumbles, nothing like that.
Not going to lose
Barry,
75.
I don't know what's going to happen when Barry Sanders touches the ball.
That's the one comment. Thurman was consistent, not big losses like Sanders.
He might lose 10 yards. You don't know.
Yeah, he might run all the way back and run out. Oh, very interesting. Good question. I like that. Keeping us on our toes. So again, my number 1, Thurman Thomas. Your number 1, Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith was also my number 3. So what do you got for your number 2 best Buffalo Bills draft pick of all time?
And I went Andre Reed here.
Oh, he's my number 2 too.
Oh, perfect. My number 3 was Thurman. So we're
nice. Look at the list.
But Andre Reed, 4th round pick, right? 86 total touchdowns for Buffalo. Thurman Thomas is at 87 total touchdowns. I mean, the guy's just one of the most talented receivers, you know, I think probably the most talented receiver in this franchise, right? And to get him in the 4th round, you know, I think it's tremendous value there. Again, guy who's, you know, people look up to in the community, you know, easy shoe in for the Hall of Fame. I mean, for a receiver, getting snuffed a few years, but I mean, got in. But yeah, Andre Reed all day.
4th round pick, picked 86th overall in the 1985 NFL draft, which is also a cool thing. So him and Bruce were taken in the same draft. What a draft class. So yeah, 4th round pick. Yep. 4th round pick, 86th overall. When he retired, he was 3rd all time in receptions in the NFL. Think about how crazy that is. When he retired, he was 3rd all time in receptions.
Right.
Wild.
And there's a lot of good players on that team. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't the only option, right? They're not force-feeding the ball.
No.
You know?
And especially with how, like, they could be a quick strike, big play offense. It's not like he was piling up, like, 7 catches per drive or 7 catches, like 6 yards a catch. He was just doing so many things. And yeah, when that always blows my mind that when he retired, he was 3rd all time in receptions. That's a crazy, awesome stat. He played for the Bills 221 games in 15 years, 951 catches with the Bills. And he finished his NFL career with 13,198 yards receiving, which currently right now is 17th all time. As you mentioned, he had 86 touchdowns for the Bills. He was a 2-time second-team All-Pro. Even with that, this guy finished 3rd all time when he retired. 3rd all time in receptions in the NFL. 4th rounder, and he only made the second-team All-Pro. He didn't even make first-team All-Pro in the years that he was crushing it. Just so even now in the those teams were stacked. Receivers were great at those times.
And I'm not sure why he was a 4th round pick. You know, I'm not sure what the storyline. Like, we know, like, DK Metcalf, right? Injury issue.
Yeah, I think if you look at Reed, even, I mean, I don't know if the draft buzz was at that time, but even like in watching him play, for me, I would think maybe it's like nothing really jumps off. He's not the fastest. He's not the biggest. He's not the strongest. He's not the most agile. There's another great comment there. Over the middle all day, every week. He wasn't a burner. He was strong as hell. He was really just this receiver that had great hands and got the tough yards, but he did all those things that I don't think are necessarily like the measurable stuff. So even if you look at him as like a person, like you're like, you play in the NFL?
Yeah.
You ever see like what? Like he wasn't physically imposing. He didn't have the metrics that jumped off the board. He was just kind of like, not to mention scouting and everything wasn't like it was back then. I remember even hearing, we all talk about, like, I think Jerry Rice is the best receiver of all time and the greatest football player of all time, arguably. Yeah. But even then, like, people didn't really know about Jerry Rice going into that draft. Bill Walsh found him on accident when he was looking at film of something else. Like,
it's just that work ethic, right? I think Andre Reed's father was a Marine, something like that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Military background, so he mentions that a lot. You know, when he does it,
he just grinds and grinds,
and that's Jerry Rice, right? Just grind all day, every single day.
And you had to back then, like in the 80s and the 90s. There's no, and this is, I don't want anybody getting hurt ever. I don't want serious injuries to happen. But the NFL that I love, even though it was before my time, those 80s and 90s NFL, I want receivers to know that when they run over the middle, there's a chance that they're going to get clotheslined and lose their face. And Andre Reed played at a time where you could go over the middle and get a helmet to your ribs or get a forearm to the face.
Taylor, guys like Lawrence Taylor, right?
Or Ronnie or Ronnie Lott, when they tried to hit you, they wanted to like end your life in a variety of ways. And just the toughness for how many games that he played. He didn't really miss time, just a model of consistency. I saw some stat, I wish I could remember it, about how many consecutive seasons he had with at least 50 catches. He was just a model of consistency, and to your point, hard work. He was a grinder. And again, Hall of Famer, tremendous stats, and a guy that the Bills got in the 4th round. Pick 86. Yeah. Wild.
That's value.
Tremendous value. Oh, man. Yeah, so he was your 2, right?
Yes, 2.
He was your 2. He was my 2. My 3 was Bruce, and your 3 was Thurman. So we had pretty much the same list. We just flipped where Bruce and Thurman were.
I tried to mix it up from this 90s team, but you just can't. They're so good.
It's tough.
That team was so good,
And Bill value for the spots. Oh, Bill Polian, tremendous. Actually, that was I wish I could. Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Butler and Polian made a great team.
Crushed it.
That comment was tremendous. Yeah.
Mark Levy gets credit as well.
They built such a great team. Roman, who was the guy who played?
I thought it was cool too. Like Thurman Thomas had 88 total touchdowns, or 87, and Andre Reed had 86 for Buffalo in their career. I mean,
there was also a ton of distribution on those teams. Like Kenneth Davis got touchdowns, and like Pete Metzelaars and Keith McKellar got touchdowns, and James Lofton got touchdowns, and Tasker and Beat. Like
touchdowns
there were so
for
many.
Everybody
just saying, you get a touchdown and you get a touchdown. Roman, who was that guy who played for the Raiders who was basically a straight-up hitman? You're either referring to George Atkinson or Jack Tatum. I think it's Jack Tatum who you're probably referring to. Jack Tatum is the one who has the quote, and the book, I believe, as well. They call me assassin, because he literally was. He also has that hit in the Super Bowl against the Vikings where he hits the dude so hard that his helmet explodes. His ear pad comes out, his chin strap pops out, like Jack Tatum rocks him with his helmet. Oh, and there's Brian going there with Tatum. Yeah, those were dudes in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Like if you were a receiver, there's a chance you were going to get like legally murdered when you caught the football.
It's so different. Yeah, you go back and watch those tapes. It's like
same thing with.
There's no holding back ever.
No, and same thing with I is a part of a different conversation, but I recognize Brady's greatness, but I think you have to classify quarterbacks in terms of different generations and ages in the NFL. And I always think like maybe Joe Montana's career looks completely different if he doesn't sustain the injuries that he had in the playoffs against the Giants and against the Bears, where dudes literally picked him up and slammed him on his head and gave him concussions.
Because that offense was so innovative and he was so good.
And if anybody got and if anybody got near him, they would be like, well, let's try to dump him and separate his shoulder, which they did. Or let's drop him on his head so he gets a concussion and he has to be out. Like
Joe Theismann comes to mind,
Oh, poor Theismann.
Broke his leg. Yeah, done.
The league was just so different at times. And I think about like guys and what their careers would have been like if they weren't cut short with certain injuries, just because the game was, they kind of legalized murder and assault.
Things like Bountygate, which we're mostly familiar with. It was kind of unregulated back then. Who knows? what was going on.
Yeah.
You know,
that wouldn't have even been a story in like the 80s or the 90s. It would have been like, like one of the coaches asked Lawrence Taylor to rip this guy's face off. I don't get it. It's football. That's no big deal. Why are we talking about this? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's what this is. What'd you have for honorable mentions?
Honorable mentions. I'll give you 3. I have 4.
No, give me all 4. I want all 4.
All 4. Okay, all right. So let's go Jim Kelly.
Okay.
And the reason I didn't put him in is just because there's that weird gap where he gets drafted and didn't play for 3 years.
I did the same thing because he went to the Gamblers, and I was like, value, we missed out on some time with him.
Now, I get it, though. He's the franchise player of the Bills. Every time you think of Bills, you think Jim Kelly. I mean, he's the only franchise quarterback they've ever really had. Like, truthfully, close the book. He was one. I mean, we could go back farther. Joe Ferguson, if you want.
I would say it's only them two.
But, I mean, Jim Kelly's the franchise quarterback, right?
Yeah, Kemp and Ferguson are from the earlier times. Like, the only NFL franchise quarterback we've had was Jim Kelly.
Right, and anytime you hit on a franchise quarterback, which means they played 12 years or whatever, that's got to be in the conversation.
Big time.
Obviously, Kyle Williams, just because of the 5th-round talent, true leader on and off the field, heart and soul of the team for years and years. Stevie Johnson, 7th-round pick, value all day long. I mean, I remember, Darrelle Revis, the Island years, right? And Stevie Johnson made him look silly. And this guy's a 7th-round pick. I mean, that's
wild. One of the most underappreciated route runners and guys to get off the line in NFL history. True. Unreal. His film is so fun to watch.
He's so innovative,
Yeah.
Stuff you never seen. And I just wanted to throw Reuben Brown in there.
Oh, great one.
Nice solid guard who just holds it down under the radar for years.
Great one.
Every team needs a Reuben Brown.
He was such a force in the middle and such a calming. We haven't had I guess maybe Dawkins is kind of, but Reuben Brown was like close to being all-pro level for several years. Is Reuben Brown the last great Buffalo Bills lineman? When you're thinking of consistency and high quality play, because I'm thinking like after that, like Eric Wood was good, but he was like short-lived in his career.
I think I'm botching the name. Wolfman was Walt Wolfman, or I can't remember. Was picked the year before him. Big tackle.
Oh. Since
then, though, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know who that. Cody Ford. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I
was waiting
I like
for
this.
Like that.
Right? Oh, Travis Henry gets a vote from Kenny here.
Marshawn, right?
Yeah, we just didn't use Marshawn to the best of his. No. My honorable mentions, I had Jim Kelly up there for the same reasons as you. Yeah, Stevie Johnson, 7th round, 200 pick. He was picked 224. He was the 224th overall pick in the 2008 draft. He had 3 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons, 58 starts with the Bills, 28 receiving touchdowns. Good numbers. Good. Oh, and then we got to count Wolford. I think that's the answer to your. There you go.
That's what I was looking for.
Stevie Johnson made it there for me. And again, we mentioned it earlier. There's some guys now who hopefully, when we're doing this same episode 15 or 20 years from now, we can say Josh Allen and Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White. Tre'Davious White, even though he's probably out of everyone, like if we're looking at the new crop of guys, he would be the closest to making my honorable mention list just because he's had the most sample size, 40 years, 61 starts, 15 interceptions. He's already made an all-pro team. But, I mean, we've got a nice crop of guys. He is a stud. And we've got guys coming up. I think that's the exciting thing going forward now is, like, all jokes aside, like if we're having this conversation again with the way things are trending now, granted, I don't want to – those Bills 90s teams were great. And I still don't think they're ever going to be tremendously appreciated because they never won a ring. But those Bills 90s teams were great. But hopefully we're trending in a direction now. And I don't even say hopefully, but there's some decent realism to it. Having this conversation 10 to 15 years from now, our list could look different. We could be sitting here and Josh Allen might be rivaling.
We got it.
Yeah. Sorry. You know what I was trying to say. Rivalry. I was saying rivalry and rivaling at the same time. He might be rivaling Bruce Smith for that number 1 spot in terms of best draft pick of all time. You might have to throw Trey in there and Matt Milano. And there's even more names. I love the names that are coming through from other people in the chat. Phil Hansen, really quality pick for the Bills. This one was one for me. I debated with this one.
Molds, yeah.
Eric Molds. I love Eric Molds. The reason I didn't put him on the list is because he was still a first-round pick. So he was a great pick, solid. I think he's really underappreciated, but I thought with where he was taken, he just doesn't crack my top 3 because, again, Thurman being picked in the 2nd, Andre Reed taken in the 4th, like that value aspect. Even again, if we're looking at, like, I think Trey White is a stud. Milano's close to stud level, but
right for a 5th-round pick, that helps.
Exactly, that value conversation. Like Trey was taken in the 1st round, 27th overall. Matt Milano was taken in the 5th. Like that value conversation, but Molds was
all
up
these
there
guys
for
are
me.
trending up, which is a good sign.
Exactly. You could even make the case for, depending on what he does this year, and the comment that came through, Gabriel Davis.
Right.
Value that we got from him last year. There's a lot of potential.
Let's not forget about guys like Zay Jones, right?
Oh, bust,
unfortunately.
I didn't know what to think when we got him. I hadn't seen a ton of his tape, but I was like, well, he's got all these catches and he set all these records. And then, like, I think the first couple of games he had like 2 drops, and I was like, I thought his whole thing was he doesn't drop passes.
Right.
I was
most
like,
catches in collegiate football of all time, or something like that.
And I was like, no. Oh, this is Moles is you mean fastest Bills receiver to 100 catches? That would be pretty cool. And another one coming through, Daryl Talley. There's even more from those 90 teams, like Shane Conlon, and so many guys who just the value was there. Oh, this is a funny question that we go from here. Does giving up our first rounder for Stephon Diggs count? So Stephon Diggs counting as a first round draft pick? No, if we want to, sure.
If it did, it'd be in the top 3.
I was going to say that. Oh, that's very interesting. Oh, here's another good one. This one is from the drought teams. Schobel was a second rounder. Aaron Schobel. Yep. Yeah, he was the only defensive threat. He was strong. If you're talking about Cornelius Bennett, which I'm assuming you are, we didn't draft him. We traded for him. So Biscuit doesn't count. Ooh, more coming through the chat. Henry Jones, 90s Bills safety. Are you laughing at the
next one?
Zay Jones, first Bills wide receiver to run around naked, covered in blood in a hotel.
That's what you think.
Sad.
That's the only one we know of, though.
Yeah, right? Like, another comment through. Yeah, we did trade for Bennett. But it's exciting. I started with the worst in my list, and then I was like, well, this sucks. And then I started going through the best, and I was like, well, this is more hopeful. And I think the cool thing now as we go forward with the NFL draft in a couple weeks and moving forward with the Bills now, like, again, to go back to that point, realistically, we could be sitting here in 10 years thinking, man, so who's the best Buffalo Bills draft pick of all time? Because right now, hands down, it's Bruce Smith. Someone has to do something legit. But if the Bills can win a Super Bowl, Josh Allen all of a sudden has to go into that conversation. Or, I don't know, if Tre'Davious White rises again, maybe Trey White wins like Defensive Player of the Year in a couple years, or does something like, and we also win a ring. Like things start to happen a little bit.
If Josh can keep getting better, last year was an unbelievable season for him. If he can continue to do that, you're talking top 3, quarterback in the league year in, year out. Aaron Rodgers level. You've got to put Josh in there. And I'm really excited to see what Tremaine Edmunds can do. I know he's becoming a hot topic right now, but this guy is only 1 year older than Micah Parsons, who's coming out in the draft.
You put that in the cover one DM today.
1 year.
That was
They're
awesome.
both born in the same month, 1 year apart. And we're talking about 5th-year option with one player, and we're talking about drafting the other.
And people are talking about Micah Parsons as though he's like some people have him as like the second coming of defensive player value and how great he is. And Tremaine's younger than
I think Tremaine Edmunds is just getting started, to be honest with you.
I like that. I'm hoping to bet on that. He varies. Oh man, there's more. Kenny's been killing it. Jason Peters, also very good value. Wow, this is a question that came through. Who was a better pick, Josh Allen or Jim Kelly?
That's a great question. Well, if you
I can go first.
Looking back, Jim Kelly, obviously, we know what he is. We can close the book on him. Success story, right? Josh Allen's book's still being written, but Jim Kelly did have that weird period where he just kind of abandoned the team, and Josh hasn't done that I mean, that's
true.
Value.
Showed up right away. I'm going to have to say, well, actually, first, before I do that, thank you, Danny, so much for the donation. I say it every time, but you guys truly have no idea how much just engaging in the chat goes for us. And then especially like these, like the donations, it's tremendously important to what we do. And it makes us feel great. And it's so important to the sustainability of what Cover One does. So Danny, thank you so much. I'm glad you had fun. Always go Bills. Thank you so much, Danny. If I'm answering that question, I just still think it's too early to say Allen. I like Josh Allen a lot, but Jim Kelly quarterbacked us to 4 straight Super Bowls. He was the quarterback of an offense that changed what was going on in football. I just don't think, and yet to the comment that's made here, the jury is still out 100%. On Allen. I'm a little more confident in Josh Allen, but if we're comparing the career of a quarterback who we think is going to do good versus a bona fide Hall of Famer, you got to go with the bona fide Hall of Famer. I'd take Kelly. And also, again, if we're talking value, we traded up and traded resources to get Allen, so we had to invest more. So his return would have to be even better than Kelly's. And I mean, yeah, I like Allen a lot. I think he's going in a lot of positive directions. But exactly, Kelly has a bigger book of work, and that book includes a Hall of Fame jacket, which is not an easy thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But also off the field with Jim Kelly. I mean, what an inspiration that guy is.
So much. Just everything he did off the field, but everything now.
Right.
Oh my God. And yeah, that's a great Jim Kelly had misconceptions about Buffalo. He still lives here. It's proof. I love seeing the draft day videos of Jim Kelly when he got taken and he's at his house and they're like, "Oh, how do you feel about going to Buffalo?" And he's like, yeah, I mean, I'm excited. And then they lay over it with him talking. And he's like, yeah, when I got picked, I didn't want to go to Buffalo. I was super upset. That's why I went to Houston. And then there's the video of him. Oh, that it always made me so mad. Oh, yeah. The video of him arriving in Houston for the Gamblers. And they asked him like, oh, you know, this or the NFL. And he's like, oh, for me, it comes down to like the cities. And would you rather live in Houston or would you rather live in Buffalo? And it's no question, it's Houston. And he like laughs and then walks into the hotel. And I was like, oh my God, like what a jerk. But
it's pretty crazy too, because he grew up in like Western PA, not too far away,
which is Buffalo, like right around the corner. Like you grew up in a similar town in a similar
always
state.
Made me wonder, like if the Bills took Dan Marino from Pittsburgh, you know, how would that turn out?
I always think of that. Like, what would that have looked like?
Yeah.
What would that have looked like? This is an interesting comment. I think Josh is going to leave if he doesn't sign the next contract he gets. I think that's a wild accusation and very outlandish. I don't know why you would think Josh Allen would leave, or also why we wouldn't give him a contract of value that would keep him around.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance he leaves Buffalo. Look, the grass is not always greener, especially for this team. They have the facilities now. They have the coaching staff. The culture's built. Josh has no reason to leave Buffalo.
No, I completely agree. And as we start to wind down with some things, Cliff here, people's negative opinions on Tremaine Edmunds baffles me. I guess, Eric, we can close out with some thoughts on that, seeing as how we were talking about in the group chat earlier and talking about it a little bit before we got on air. Yeah, Tremaine Edmunds just gets, and I don't think I don't want to give him the easy out of being like, well, he's young or well, he's young, although that does play into it. But I think people are just so harsh on him because of two things. One, where he was taken and we traded up to get him. Two, as Greg mentioned it in the group chat, I think everybody just assumed, oh, linebacker, oh, Sean McDermott, oh, this guy's going to be the next Luke Kuechly. Right. Luke Kuechly was like arguably the best defensive player in the NFL for a solid stretch.
Super smart,
and it just, everything between the ears, physical talent, he was tremendous in so many ways. That's like any Bears linebacker getting drafted and always being like, oh, he's going to be Butkus. Oh, he's going to be Singletary. Oh, he's going to be Urlacher. Yep, that's what he's going to be. Like that's a hard thing to do. And I think the expectations and the bar were set so high that even if he did very good, it's not going to be easy to reach those expectations, let alone when you have things like Star Lotulelei opting out and then the injury that Edmunds had. Like he had to battle through a lot last year, and he gets a bad rap.
The fundamentals of the linebacker position have evolved. You know, everyone thinks Ray Lewis, hard-hitting linebacker. Now it's all about speed, right? So it's a little bit different in that sense. I mean, everybody wants a Roquan Smith or a Devin White, and I think Tremaine Edmunds does fit that a little more. he's not such a hard hitting linebacker that people are used to.
That's very true. I think I'm still going to bang the drum for the shoulder injury that he had last year and playing through that, and also the star Latulele opt out. You mentioned Ray Lewis. That's a great segue. Look at Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis is one of the best linebackers of all time. Look at Ray Lewis when he was playing with Tony Siragusa and Sam Adams up front, and then look what happened after that, and then look how his game rose again when the Ravens drafted Haloti Ngata and put him in the middle of that defense. When those defensive tackles, Siragusa, Adams, and Haloti Ngata, could keep linemen off of Ray Lewis, and he would be able to go free and go free.
And Quinton Jefferson was playing that role, but he's not a fan of it.
No, and we didn't have those. We had like penetrating defensive tackles having to play one tech because of Star opting out. And again, thank you so much for the donation. Greatly appreciate it. I think that's a great comment. People had way too high of expectations too soon for Edmunds. He still may reach them. That's a very fair point. And I'm going to bring up some of DK's comments here. I recognize he has some issues with being able to shed a block, but this is too much. Edmunds is garbage. He plays small. He should have way more tackles. He never makes plays. Here's my thing. If you think Tremaine Edmunds doesn't make plays, I recognize you think he should make more, and that's fair. And granted, maybe it's a small sample size, and ironically, it's the same opponent. I want you to watch the Bills game against the Ravens in the regular season in 2019, and I want you to watch the Bills game against the Ravens in the playoffs this year, and tell me Tremaine Edmunds doesn't make plays, literally hemming Lamar Jackson in left and right, keeping guys inside. He's made some splash plays. I think they get overshadowed by some of the things that he's missed, but to say that he's garbage and he doesn't make plays is too much. And here's a good comment as well. I don't value the Pro Bowl a ton, but what's cool, and Greg also mentioned this in the group chat, Edmunds made the Pro Bowl on the part of the ballot that players and coaches vote for. He wasn't voted in by fans. He was voted in by the NFL players and coaches who literally know the game and who recognize oh yeah, that guy's doing good stuff. Has he lived up to expectations to the comment earlier? No, I don't think he's lived up the expectations, but he's far from a bad player, far from a bust, and he's definitely someone that we have to pick the option up on, unless you disagree, Eric. But I
think we should definitely pick up the option 100%. But I think it is fair to acknowledge, Edmunds disappeared for a few games this year.
1,000%.
But I mean, again, expectations and the pressure is on now, right? And I think how he responds to that this offseason is really going to determine what the next few years look like. You definitely pick up the option. I think they do look to re-sign him at some point in the future, but this is a big year for him, no doubt.
I agree. And to pull up, so DK, that's only 2 games against one team, right? But he's made plays against a variety of teams. Garbage was hyperbolic, but he doesn't live up to expectations. He's an average player. I don't think he's average, but I will give you this, and to Eric's point, for me, I think last year, I was all about Josh Allen's jump. What does Allen do from year 2 to year 3? My eyes for this year are that jump for Tremaine Edmunds. Right. And I'm not saying he has to have a similar Josh Allen jump where he's got to be in top 5 for Defensive Player of the Year voting, but he's got to have a significant jump this year for me to think he's one of the cornerstones. Regardless, I'm picking up his 5th-year option. Eric, I'd love to get your thoughts about this because I'm picking up his 5th-year option, but what the contract looks like going forward or what a long-term deal looks like, this year is very significant for me because as we start to move forward in the defense, Milano is a cornerstone. Tre'Davious White's a cornerstone. After that, there's a lot of things that are up in the air. Who's that other piece? Is it Ed Oliver? Is it AJ Epinesa? Is it going to be a guy we draft in the draft this year? Right. Is it Tremaine Edmunds? That third cornerstone piece of the defense? Because the offense, it's set. We're looking at Josh Allen. We're looking at Deion Dawkins. We're looking at Stephon Diggs. We know who kind of those big 3 are. The defense, you're looking at Milano and Trey White, and then number 3 is up for grabs. Right now, it's either Poyer or Hyde. Right, but then my thing is going forward, because in a couple years, Hyde's going to be in that older spot. Hyde is for sure, or Poyer. Yeah. They're the linchpins right now. But as we go forward, who becomes that third option out of the younger crew? It's a question, and Edmunds has to be the guy.
And we're going to talk about this on our show next week, Tuesday. but the Hoof Podcast. But I think safety is a sneaky need for the Bills because, like you mentioned,
Agreed.
Micah Hyde is getting older. Jordan Poyer's not all that young, really. When you talk about
both of them,
next 3 seasons, like I think,
right?
Safety could be in play in this draft.
And you think about Hyde and Poyer, who we all love, but they're not the most athletic and they're not the most fleet of foot. They're only going to get slower and less agile as they go forward. And it's not like they were burners or the most athletic guys to begin with. I love this point that Roman put through. Think about it this way. At Tremaine Edmunds' age, he's basically a great college linebacker prospect with actual NFL experience. That's a really good way to put it. I never really looked at it like that.
Right, but the facts are the facts. Like, the 5th-year option it's getting picked up.
Yeah.
Right. You go from there, but I mean, I think it's really doubtful that, he's not a Bill for a long time.
I would agree. I think he gets that 5th-year option gets picked up and then they throw some kind of deal at him. I just know when the initial thought was like, he could see 2 big deals with how young he is and he could set the linebacker market both times. I don't think we're looking at that. I think we're looking at a deal similar to like the Milano or Levante David type of deal, but in a middle linebacker conversion type of thing like that. Yeah, I don't think he's signing this gajillion-dollar linebacker deal that's going to keep him for forever. But I think he is somebody who will be on the team for a very long time as he continues to develop. Oh, here's another Marcellus Wiley for best Buffalo draft picks of all time. Good value.
That's sneaky.
Fun guy. That is a sneaky one. That's a perfect way to describe it. Sneaky. Ooh, we hit a lot of things.
Yeah. I got one more sneaky one.
Ooh, I'm going to take off the Toodles, you guys, then, and I'm going to put Buffalo's best draft picks back on. What do you got? Who's your sneaky one?
Daryl Lamonica, also known as the Mad Bomber.
I forgot that he was originally a Bills pick.
Way back in the day. You might have the year over there, but picked in the 24th round of the draft and played 4 seasons with the Bills. That's 24th round.
I didn't know. When you and I talked about him earlier, I didn't know he was a Bill. I always knew him as a Raider. I didn't know he got taken. Yeah, he did.
You know what else I learned today studying this is Ernie Davis from Syracuse, who ultimately played for Cleveland and ended up passing away at 23. He was drafted by the Bills as well, but he ended up playing for NFL, AFL, drafted by Washington, also drafted by the AFL Bills, and ultimately ended up playing Washington. Merger happens, goes to Cleveland, but the Bills did draft
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I'm thrown by
probably the biggest tragedy in all of the NFL, in NFL history, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
Oh wow!
Imagine a talented prospect coming out and passing away at 23 years old. Unbelievable.
That's unreal. That makes me think of the who's the NBA player that Len Bias?
Oh yeah, yep.
For the Celtics, yeah, who was like going to be the next big thing, and I'm still floored. Not to get off the Ernie Davis, I'm floored by Daryl Lamonica because I knew him. I know him well, hands down. But I was associated with the Raiders. Yeah, I didn't know he was a Bills pick, and he led the Raiders to 4 consecutive division titles between 1967 and 70. He was in the Super Bowl and Super Bowl II. He was twice the AFL's most valuable player. Wow, I did not know he was a Bill. Good call. Crazy. Yeah, he was a Bill from 63 to 66, and then he was a Raider from 67 to 74.
I just thought it was hilarious he was taken in the 24th round.
That's super funny.
I mean, the draft's fun, but if it was 24 rounds, would it be that fun?
Oh, probably. Man. It probably would be. Oh, he was in the AFL draft, round 24. And he was also taken in the NFL draft. He was taken round 12, pick 168. And then the AFL draft, round 24, pick 188. He got taken. That's crazy. I did not know he was a Bill. Good time. Oh, and then as we start to go through, Jack Kemp. So Kemp replaced Lamonica. I didn't know that either.
Jack Kemp, solid.
We're all learning stuff on this one. I also like the
the
names are starting to come. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we are nerds. 1,000% everybody's a nerd for something. Even like football players, they're jocks, but they're nerds for football. Like everybody's a nerd for something. That's a term that I think it's forced into a corner too much sometimes. Oh, and then also good options for Jarris Bird, Robert Woods. Man, I loved Robert Woods. I wanted the Bills to keep him so much. His route running, his hands. Productive. Yeah, I really wanted the Bills.
How was that team not good, man?
Dude.
That team was stacked.
Dude, we had Sammy and Robert Woods. Even if Sammy was halfway competent, he could have been like the number 2 because Woods could be a 1, and he's just looked so good.
Like Eric Woods is another honorable mention.
Oh, Wood, yeah, his career was a little shorter in the guard, and then went to center. Andy Levitri was also a good pick. Him and Wood in the center in the interior were so good, and then Levitri left, and then Wood eventually retired. Oh man, what a show! We start to wind down here for Cliff. Good night, fellas. Great show. Thank you, Cliff. Appreciate you. I brought this up earlier. We wanted to pull it up again because you're a good guy. I'm a fan of the show. Man, what a time. I want to thank everyone, as always, in the live chat who rode with us live. Thank you so much. You guys make it tremendously enjoyable to do this thing live, and you're a key component. I want to thank everybody who commented, who engaged, especially the donations. Thank you guys so much. If you're watching this later or listening to this later, thank you so much for listening, downloading, whatever. It's tremendously appreciated. Again, I say it all the time. You guys have no idea how much your support means to us. And also want to give a big thank you to Mr. Eric B. for being on this episode. I literally could not have done it without you. Well, no, that's not true. I would have done it, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. And you added so much to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate having me on because great topic. You know, I always love talking history. So,
yeah, same. And dude, you still floored me with the Lamonica thing. I literally have not. That wasn't even one of those things where I was like, oh, you know what? I do remember that. I had no idea Daryl Lamonica played for the Buffalo Bills or was taken by the Bills. I always thought he was born a Raider, drafted a Raider, stayed a Raider.
They should bring the nicknames back. Because it's literally like, you know,
the Mad Bomber's
Football Reference has in parentheses the Mad Bomber.
That's sweet. That's
sweet. We don't have that these days. It's like, you know, I'm trying to think of a nickname.
Do you know what Tre'Davious White's nickname is on Pro Football Reference?
No.
Shaq.
Weird.
It says Tre'Davious White parentheses Shaq. I'm like, every time I saw that, I'm like, what? The first time I saw it, I was like, what? And I was like, maybe that's a mistake. But it's like, if you look it up right now, it's weird.
Shaq. Yeah, that was a weird one. We'll have to investigate that further.
Oh, but yeah, Eric, you were fantastic. And I mentioned it earlier that you are 1/3 of the Hoof podcast on the Cover One Sports Network. But why don't you let the people of this guy's coverage know where they can find you, what you do, and all your stuff?
Yeah. Check us out. We're live on Tuesday nights, Sterling, Anthony, and I. And we just talk Bills. We've been hitting the draft hard. Anthony's putting out a show this week. You know, he's going to talk about why the Bills should not draft a running back. Gets a little crazy with that, but I'm taking
he's very passionate about that.
I get into the statistics. You can check out a show that I did last week where I break down cornerback and edge for the Bills, and I get pretty deep into some stats about Levi Wallace and Jerry Hughes and what a draft pick would have to compete with if you're taking in round 1 this year. So be sure to check that out. You find me on Twitter, eBrownHoof. And I appreciate you having me on. I had a great time, and you know, looking forward to the next time we can do this.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you were able
an undrafted segment.
Oh, that would be a good one too. I like where your head's at. Yeah, I loved you coming aboard. The history talk was great. You made this so enjoyable. And yeah, everybody go check out the Hoof. Check out Eric and Anthony Romeo. And there, we'll not draft a running back.
He's always in the background somewhere.
I don't want a running back in round 1 either, but part of me really wants it just to watch Anthony have a meltdown. Like there's a significant part of me that wants that to happen.
He also said he would get a tattoo if they take one.
Now I really want it.
And like I mentioned, I'm against running back as well, but I'd be mad for about 4 hours.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, but
all right, well, here we are. This is our life now, you know.
Exactly. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Again, please rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage and all the other great content on Cover One, including the Hoof podcast. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Cover One has the best content and analysis and breakdowns when it comes to anything and everything Buffalo Bills. That's the podcast, that's the Twitter and the film breakdowns that come through and the draft prospect stuff, anything and everything. And as we continue to move forward towards the draft, we've got several Cover One super shows coming up over the next couple of weeks, especially the week of the draft. We've got a really fun Hoof episode I know you guys have planned on the 27th, a little super show type feel. And then we've got some super show things going on for night 1, night 2, and then day 3 of the NFL draft. So there's a lot going on. Keep it locked in to Cover One and all the great content that we have. Also, check out the Cover One Buffalo podcast with Greg and Aaron. Those are the trifecta of shows. Like, review, rate, subscribe. Appreciate everybody. I'm going to pull up these last two comments. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Roman. And this one, I'm going to leave it on that as we go out. No doubt Cover One is the best. Appreciate you very much. Appreciate all you guys. Eric, once again, thank you so much for being here. You made this a blast. I appreciate you. I'm glad you had a good time.
Made it easy, buddy.
Thank you so much. And as always, I hope you, your family, and friends and loved ones all stay safe and are doing well. I will see you next week, and go Bills.
Go Bills.